jeweller's blades, so it's a jeweller's saw now. My one's a little bit unusual because I've just got a hole there for a blade to go in, and then this tiny piece, literally the end of the threaded screw, holds that in position. Normally they've got a kind of flat plate with a thumb piece, so you can turn it, and they hold the blade in position there. They work very well. I like those. They're very well balanced, but this one is too. It's aluminium, or is that might be a soft grade sort of steel. That's aluminium. Yeah, this must be steel. That's aluminium. Yeah, just this bit is steel. And I've got a rubber handle, which I thought, I got this saw frame about 20 years ago. I thought that might wear out, but it hasn't at all. It's just really dirty. If I ultrasonic that, that's going to come up like new. I might do that later. Right, so yeah, I like this. It's nicely balanced. You don't want a heavy frame because that's fatiguing when you're working. I don't know. Saw frame. You can't go too far wrong with them. Personally, I like coarse files and coarse sandpaper, and I like chunky, coarse saw blades. I just like the effectiveness of them. They cut really fast. They seem to be very sharp. They cut really fast. They're not agile. I don't have a problem turning them around, and they're very strong. It's easier to go in a straight line. However, you definitely will need thinner blades. I never go thinner than that, which is a cut 6. I don't think I've ever bought anything thinner than cut 6. I'll give you an actual measurement. If you've never handled a thin jeweller's saw blade before, look, 0.2 of a mil, like nothing. So yeah, basically whatever you want to use, get what you want, keep them together. I've got this military shell thing. I just have them sat up in that. Another way I used to do, works very well. This is a strong magnet, neodymium magnet, whatever they're called. They're very, very strong. So that just sticks to the edge of your lamp or whatever's nearby, and then you can grab one easily. I put them in there. You can also keep them sturdy in that. So select a saw blade. I get a chunky one because it'll just be more clear what's going on the video. Your bench peg is likely to have a little kind of groove in there. Hopefully you haven't cut a big V in it, because that's an awful thing to do. You always have the saw teeth pointing towards you, because when we're making jewellery, you always cut on the downstroke, never on the upstroke. It's much more control going down. So check the blade. If it's quite fine, you can always touch it. When I'm doing the extra fine ones, I have a look. I can usually see just about, but sometimes I touch it with my finger, make sure you can feel the teeth gripping when you move it away from you. Put it in position. Put it in position there, and I've been mucking about my saw frame, so this is all wrong now. So get it in a position on the bench peg where it's not going to slip off. Just lean on it, push the handle into your chest, wherever's comfortable. Just a little bit of body weight, you don't have to go crazy. Get the blade in position, just lean on it a little bit so the frame is flexing closed. Tighten it up a decent amount so you know it's not going to slip when you're working on it, and then as you let go, the flex of the frame opens up again, and then it holds that nice and tight. You don't have to go crazy. I think only once I can think of I broke a blade by putting too much tension on it. It's a very rare thing to happen because they're very strong, especially on that tension pulling straight. They're very brittle, very hard metal, so the blades, the teeth last a long time. There's no flex in them at all. Okay, let's cut something. So you know exactly where you want to cut, through the solder joint if at all possible. Heat, if you've got a ring, it's not going to damage the stones. If there are some delicate stones in there, make sure you protect them from the heat. But heat up the back of the shank, and then the solder will show up immediately because it tarnishes at a sort of different temperature to the rest of the metal. So what I do is I make sure it's comfortable. I like the corner of the peg, and with my thumb there, I kind of touch the blade against my thumb to make sure it lands exactly where I want. So that's sturdy now in that position. I start with an upward stroke, still using that thumb against the blade to make sure it goes exactly where I want. So that puts a little mark in there. I believe that mark to guide a saw cut is called a kerf. Don't quote me on that. So you kerf the metal. That might be a carpentry term, I don't know where I've got that from. So anyway, start it ideally with an upward stroke. If you start with a downward stroke, there's a chance it can slip, or you just cut it in the wrong position, you're immediately cutting. And that's messy, especially in platinum, where little nicks and things in the wrong position are very unforgiving, because ideally they need to be repaired with 1700 solder, and it's not always possible to use that when you've got very heat sensitive stones in the ring, or previous repairs or sizings next to it. If it's had a piece put in, you're going to have 2 solder joins, and you don't know whether it was done last time with an easy solder or medium solder. So when you're trying to repair little nicks you put in a ring with 1700, which you need to use because it doesn't polish out as easily, other solder joints are going to melt, and then you could have a piece come out and then the ring go out of shape, and it all gets very messy. So anyway, back to what I'm talking about. So let's just stick with sawing, shall we? Okay. So yeah, you got your little nick in there. So you go up, just go down 1. And I start with go down through the corner, and then I might tilt it, and then sort of again, as I'm extending the line, doing it with the upward stroke because it's a more controlled, and then go down. I think ideally you should just keep moving, making sure you're going straight down, and then you want it to be a really neat straight cut in a ring because it's going through a solder joint and you don't want to be mucking about too much. One thing you may encounter, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen with a silver ring, but say you've got a big heavy section gold ring or platinum, the tension on it is not always pulling out. Sometimes, especially like a wide ring that's been squashed down in a press, the ring's under stress pushing itself together. So when you're trying to cut through it, it's actually gripping the blade really, really tightly, and it can get really difficult to saw. So you've got to make sure you've got lube on, but it's important not to stop, because if you stop, you might break the blade pulling it out, or it might just break the blade just trying to start sawing again. So ideally, just keep going. The ring's going to be getting red hot and your fingers are going to be burning, but you've got to keep going and then get through it as much as you can. Okay, so let's cut a bit of sheet and see what comes to mind as I'm doing it, so I can give you advice on doing that. And by the way, if you're using beeswax, I would recommend, just as a little technique, melt it a bit and then stick it to the side of your bench peg, and then obviously if you're right-handed, do it on the right-hand side. Makes it very convenient when you just need a bit of wax on your blade. It's just there and you continue sawing. It's really good to have it stuck there. I don't do it because it's the only bit of wax I've got, and I need that next to my vise when I'm drawing down wire. So all of my blade lubing and drill lubing comes from that. So anyway, first thing is you don't always have to saw holding your piece on the top. What I do is, if it's obviously a flat and it's convenient to do that, you can actually put it on the bottom and push up and hold it in position. So I've used my dividers, score a little line on it. Again, use my edge of my thumb and the blade, a little upward stroke. Get that when that's in the correct position. Very gently, with very little weight on it at all, start sawing. So you've got a little bit of a head start there, and then start putting weight on. Okay, now I'm going back up to the top. So just thinking while I'm sawing there, what I'm doing is, I mean, the weight is just, there's hardly any strength from my arm. It's just kind of the weight of my hand, really, just pulling down. And I push on it steadily, the same force as I go down, and then no weight at all as I come back up. There's no point pushing as you come back up. You just, nah, don't do that. So only down, and then up, down, up with no weight, down with a bit of weight, up with no weight. As for going in a straight line, I mean, as you're sawing, I think you may be, as you're sawing a straight line, there may be just very minor little adjustments as you go along. I mean, you can be, the blade is so thin, you can be very accurate. You score with your dividers that line in there. You can choose to go on the line or slightly to the left or slightly to the right. It's whatever you need. If you're cutting out, if I needed that piece on the left, I would have cut obviously on the right hand side of the line. For something with practice, in a bit of confidence, you cut closer and closer to it, and then ideally you cut so close, just a quick file, and it's perfectly straight and exactly the distance you want. But obviously it's a bit safer, give yourself a bit of distance from the line. So yeah, that's that really. My tip is make sure it's comfortable as you're holding it, not damaging yourself, because some corners and bits of metal can be very sharp, but you need to hold on to them very tight. Keep it steady against the peg. Yeah, take your time. Don't try and do it too fast, and choose the right blade. Like something like that, a coarse blade. If it's very thin, a coarse blade can almost bend things out of position. It grips too much. So a thinner blade, but then with your thinner blade, it's more likely to go wavy on a straight line. Which brings me to my next thing. Let's turn the blade as we're cutting. So if I need to cut any kind of curve or even a right angle, the right angle's harder. Let's do that. Okay, let me go in a bit deeper. So it's not hard to go straight. People seem to assume it's difficult. It's not, with a little bit of practice. So if I want to go to a right angle, what is I'll stop, I'll get the blade vertical, saw a little bit, make sure that cut stops at a dead end. It's not like got like a taper to it. And then the trick is, don't just turn it and start sawing, because you'll twist the blade and you're more likely to break it. You can only turn it as you're sawing. So it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, but it's going to grip a little bit. Oh, this is hard. And then it eases up, so that now is in position to go that way. I mean, that was slightly difficult because this bit of metal was quite thick, and it's brass, so it's hard and horrible. Yeah, now I can literally hold it like that and cut this way, which is not ideal. Ideally, you want to always cut directly away from you, and things can get tricky. Hold things in pliers, but although that's good for accuracy and getting nice straight cuts and holding the piece and it doesn't vibrate, you are kind of likely for that to slip and break a blade. So there you go, there's a little bit I cut out. What else can we do? Next, let's up the difficulty a little bit. This is a good technique, and not many jewelers do this because they don't know about it. But if you want to be a good jeweler, it's a good thing to know. I'm just cutting off this sprue. This is a collet I made in one of my first videos. If you look through my videos, there's a bright purple amethyst collet. This was that collet I made. This is a casting of it. I had one done in gold, which ended up as a pendant, and I just got a spare one done in silver, just in case I need more in the future. It's nice to actually have one here, so I can check stones on it and make sure I can make it work with my new stone. So right, let me tell you about my technique. I need a slightly thinner blade. This one's way overkill. Where's my pot? Okay, get this one. This is a new one. It's not that thin. I think that's a cut 4. Put that position, lean on it, tighten it up. Tension does that. By the way, some blades can be different lengths, so you might have to use your length adjuster on the saw frame every now and again. I don't know why, you just buy a new pack and they're all different lengths. So this technique is a little bit advanced because it takes a bit of practice to get the technique down. So I would practice it on the edge of, okay, let me show you how I would practice it. just get any old bit of metal, using this bit of brass again. What we're doing is we're holding the blade sideways and we're using it as a file and then skimming across the metal like that. So what I'm doing is straightening. I wonder if I can make it a bit rubbish on purpose. Not really. So anyway, what we're doing is, in my casting, I'm going to be skimming the edge, which I'm going to make it look easy. When you try it and make it look neat and straight, it's a bit difficult at first. So I'm holding a blade directly sideways, almost beyond flat against the metal, because the teeth, I feel like they've got a slight kind of splay outwards a little bit. And you can use that, just touching the metal. And you can end up really neatly, really straight, get a nice finish on things. And where that technique is useful is cleaning up castings. Thread the blade through, get a piece on there. Things you need to look out for. I don't want to be looking at that piece and concentrate on that side, but then the blade is touching the other side, the kind of exit, and it's ruining all my work. So keep that in mind. So you'll have to kind of feel, you can keep looking, but make sure you're only cutting where you want to cut. Don't know if you can see where I'm about to use my saw blade, but it's not perfect inside, it's just kind of from casting. So holding it, skimming it, there's no weight on there at all. I mean, this is easy because it's cast from a good finished piece. But sometimes you've got a little bump and you can literally just skim it down. You can play with the angle, just turn it a little bit. Obviously the more I turn it that way, the more it's going to cut into it. And you can basically sort of, I'll call it filing. You can skim the surface down nice and straight and really neatens things up. And it's how you get your castings to look handmade again. Very light. There's a sort of combination of holding it very sturdy, quite strong, but being very delicate with the actions of your fingers. Also, a little trick, a little tip. When you're taking things off your blade, be very careful. Don't just yank it off, because you can put a cut in there. Just very make sure it's coming out with no resistance at all. I don't know if you can see it on camera. I mean, that's not complete. I would do more sawing to get that nice and straight. I hardly touch that side, by the way. It's just that side we're looking at. Then afterwards, I would get a very fine needle file, and then which I've also ground the back off to make it even thinner. Get that in there. Get it in there, then zip, 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 zip. Do it a bit more. That's part of the techniques for cleaning up castings nice and accurately, and it gets them looking handmade again. There's no casting marks inside. So it was a quick video. Hopefully there's some useful information in there for you. I had no idea what I was going to say before I started filming. I literally just started sawing, and just whatever came to mind as I was doing it, I spat out for the video. Yeah, it takes a bit of practice doing little techniques, cutting out little intricate shapes. Back holes, square back holes, hexagons, heart shapes. I can give you 2.5 years worth of practice in like a 10-minute video. Okay, maybe next time I'll show you to do some more advanced like back holing with your saw frame. So anyway, from today, I hope you saw something you found useful, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.